Riddick Big Daddy Bowe may be the grandest example of all the right things coming together to make the right athlete. All things but one: discipline. It reminds me of Shaquille O'Neal in that we know Shaq to be an all-time great basketball player, but if he had the work ethic of Kobe Bryant, maybe we'd be talking about him as the GOAT over Michael Jordan. Back to Bowe and boxing. I see the super heavyweight as a member of the lost generation who got away. Immense talent and potential with a lone peak moment goes hand in hand with the likes of Michael Dokes, Pinklin Thomas, and Tim Witherspoon. Riddick's career boasts a good resume. Now by good, I mean it could have been great, but we can settle for good. There are some that assert that his career is hinged on winning the Holyfield rivalry. Believe what you will. Still, what if Bowe had a great resume, one on the level of Muhammad Ali or Lennox Lewis? Considering the era that he fought in, it's very possible. So that's why we're here today, to rebook the career of Riddick Big Daddy Bowe, starting from his win over Evander Holyfield for the Undisputed Championship in 1992. To me, the focal point of conflict in Bowe's career is the very moment he dumped the WBC belt and the fight with Lennox Lewis was thrown to the smoke. In this rebooking, the fight goes through, and we'll see a disciplined Bowe that manages to transcend his known peak in 1992 while also boasting longevity similar to that of Lennox Lewis. He's fighting everyone of note that I can squeeze into this run. Most notable, of course, being Lennox Lewis himself. Welcome to the third edition of What If on BoxingPedia. Originally, Bowe fought 3 times in 1993 against Michael Dynamite Dokes, Jesse the Boogeyman Ferguson, and Evander the Real Deal Holyfield. In this timeline, Bowe will fight 4 times. To start the year, at last, is the lost chapter of lost chapters in heavyweight history that we'll sadly never see. Riddick Bowe versus Lennox Lewis for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. Before Bowe dumped the belt, in reality, this was the planned end to the 4-man tournament between Razor Ruddock, Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield, and the new champion himself. Lewis beat Ruddock rather shockingly and Bowe outwarred Holyfield. So here we are. Before the fight is officially signed, Eddie Futch insists that Riddick not fight Lennox just yet in fear of their Olympic result happening again. Bowe, fired up and as determined as he was when prepping for the title bout against Evander Holyfield, overrules and pledges to live in the gym. Riddick says that he needs to beat Lennox. He needs to show the Olympics was a farce and that he is superior to Lennox Lewis. The pre-fight sees a charismatic Bowe sell the fight and Lewis continue to taunt Bowe over the Olympics, confident that he will stop the champion again as he did in 1988. The first round saw the two going at one another right out of the gate as if they were continuing from the Olympics. Bowe had Lewis hurt in the first, but Lewis fought on. The fight continued on with Lewis edging the advantage heading into the fourth. It was evident to those looking in from the outside that Lewis was outpointing Bowe narrowly by the time of the sixth. It was subtly reminiscent of Tony Tubbs' showing against Riddick. Bowe began to counter Lewis better from the 6th on as Lewis was draining. Bowe stunned Lewis badly in round 7, but the bell saved the lion. In the 8th, Bowe had Lewis reeling as he was finally getting the better of their exchanges and outboxing his rival. In the 9th, it finally caught up to Lewis as he was dropped by Bowe after a series of hooks that succeeded a straight right. Lewis answered the count and came out aggressive. He was again stopped by a countering Bowe with a vicious overhand right that's trademark Bowe. Lewis showed heart trying to get up, but the referee had seen enough and it was over. Lewis was ahead on all cards before being knocked out in the 9th. Bowe was climbing back into the fight score-wise as well. This result showed that perhaps there was merit to Riddick's claim that their Olympic match was a bogus contest with a bogus ref. The loss to Bowe sends Lennox into a fight-or-flight sense of mind, forcing him to evolve a year earlier than he did originally after being knocked out by Oliver McCall in 1994. Bowe fights Razor Ruddock instead of Michael Dokes next for the reason that Ruddock was the last man who'd brutally beaten Dokes, and that Ruddock is the final piece of the 4-man tournament that the champ hasn't beaten. Remember that Riddick also said to Lennox Lewis how Razor Ruddock was afraid of Lennox, so maybe this is another proving ground to stick it to his rival. If Lennox could crush Ruddock, Bowe feels he can do it even more convincingly. It's also worth noting that Ruddock didn't fight in 1993 in reality, but a shot at the title and a good payday is enough to draw him out. The opening round was an absolute roller coaster that saw both men hurt. Bowe cut Ruddock and sent him to the canvas after recovering from being stunned himself. Ruddock answered and survived the round. The second round saw another brutal exchange, one that Bowe would again win. Ruddock again answered, but his cut was looking worse and he was shaken up. The third would see Bowe crush Ruddock with a series of vicious leaps to the cut over his right eye. He couldn't beat the count this time, and Bowe had secured his second title defense via third-round knockout. So who was more impressive against Ruddock? You decide. Now having beat the other 3 tournament heads, Riddick Bowe has little doubters on his throne as heavyweight champion, barring those who still believe Mike Tyson to be the true champion. Still, fight fans clamor for rematches with Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis. Meanwhile, Tommy Morrison and Larry Holmes square off for the vacant WBO title. Larry Holmes, in reality, once said to Ray Mercer how he was no Tommy Morrison. In a masterclass showing, Larry outpoints the Duke behind 2 knockdowns, making him the oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history as opposed to George Foreman. Remember, too, how Larry was coming off a year where he'd lost his bid for the undisputed title against Evander Holyfield. Larry, per usual, isn't given credit as the WBO title is not yet seen as a major title. Next up, Big Daddy Bowe fights merciless Ray Mercer for the reason that we lost out on this fight due to Mercer wetting the bed against Jesse Ferguson originally. Larry Holmes is present and brags of how he already squared away Mercer because Mercer was made for him. Bowe and Mercer have history as roommates and sparring partners from their amateur days. As I noted in the 90s timeline, Mercer said he used to beat up on Bowe. Well, how's that going to go in the pros? Both men wanted the jab advantage, seeing a trade of success and a standstill as neither gave in. Bowe's overhand right was landing, but for the first time ever in the pros, it was being absorbed and thrown right back at him. As the fight went on, it turned into the gym wars of old between the two, seeing them trade on the inside. Neither Bowe nor Mercer would back down. By now, this fight should look familiar to you all. It's Lewis Mercer all over again, and even another form of Mercer Cooper. Merciless Ray has brought his very best for his old roommate to the excitement of boxing fans. Both men dish out and absorb punishment to the final bell, and after 12 rounds of hell, Riddick Bowe retains the undisputed title. As narrow a win as it may be, the fight further increases Bowe's reputation. Mercer looks good again, too, in the aftermath of losing his O to Old Man Holmes, with some fans believing he won this affair. The grueling affair leads to Bowe's next fight happening at the tail end of the year, and talks of a rematch with Mercer float around as well. Larry Holmes defends his new crown against would-be rival from the 70s, George Foreman. perhaps they would have fought in the 70s or 80s had Foreman not retired. It's a fight all fans wanted then and are happy enough to get now. The old Lions put on a good showing, with Holmes proving to have a bit more in the tank as he outboxes George. Foreman gets his licks in and wobbles Larry here and there, but the champ continues his solid boxing. With both men fatigued in the later rounds, George scores a shocking knockout over Holmes, becoming only the second man after Mike Tyson to do as much. To his credit, Larry did rise, but was waved off on his feet. George Foreman is the new WBO champion and the new oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history. The notion feels like another Spinks jinx to Larry, who has had his moment stripped of him. Fans pile it on, and Larry vows he will regain his title in the rematch. To end the year, Bowe rematches the now Emanuel Stewart-trained Evander Holyfield, and in this version scores the win in the rematch by a similar split decision to that of which Holyfield won in reality. And yes, the fan man still descends. In reality, the billing repeater revenge yielded revenge, but in this what if, it yields repeat. Some fans and experts believe Holyfield edged it out and should have won. Emanuel Stewart, too, now has a goal in beating Eddie Futch's monster, and the partnership between he and Lennox Lewis begins much earlier than it did originally. Holyfield fails to retain Stewart as he did in reality, the loss not helping any chances of the partnership continuing. Bowe is now inexplicably responsible for bringing together what may end up being his undoing. Riddick Bowe's new 1993 was even better than his 1992, and vastly superior to his original 1993. He not only maintained his undisputed title, but remained undefeated while reshaping his narrative for the better. Talks are also on for Bowe to face the WBO champion soon in a super fight attraction. Originally, Riddick Bowe fought twice in 1994 against Buster Mathis Jr. and Larry Donald. Unfortunately, this means we don't get that two-piece press conference shot from Bowe to Donald, but we'll manage without it. Our Bowe will fight 3 times. In the real 1994, Michael Moorer defeated Evander Holyfield to become heavyweight champion, but now he's up against a Pete Big Daddy Bowe. Still, Teddy Atlas manages to get the best out of Michael for the bout, but will it be enough to overcome Riddick Bowe? Atlas implores Moorer to stay moving and to never stay in front of the champion, but to box him behind his stiff jab. It only delays the inevitable, as Bowe secures the knockout win over Michael Moorer in the 4th, taking double MO. As it was when Foreman knocked out Moorer, Bowe's power eviscerated any chance of rising. It's a valuable lesson for Moorer, the same one he learned against Big George in reality. 1 knockdown, 1 knockout. The rematch between 70s Lions George Foreman and Larry Holmes is on. Larry is cautious, scoring from the outside and utilizing the ropes when he needs a rest. Foreman remains patient and scores big here and there. This time, Larry stays away and avoids any late tests of his chin and stamina. He manages to avoid a growingly desperate Foreman too, almost dropping Big George from his own momentum. Think of how Jimmy Young dropped George. The bell saves George from the only potential knockdown in his comeback. Holmes wins by unanimous decision and regains his title as promised, also becoming the oldest heavyweight champion again at that. He turns his attention back to the undisputed championship, and he threatens to vacate the WBO title if he is not allowed to make a deal with Riddick Bowe, who has also voiced his interest in matches against both of the old Lions. The two Foreman Holmes events get some buzz around the WBO title and pique the interest further of Big Daddy Bowe. Tony Tucker was a tough opponent for anyone and was seen as a measuring stick of sorts for champions and challengers, especially after the trouble we gave Mike Tyson in 1987. Tucker tasted the canvas twice against Lewis, but made it to the final bell where he lost a unanimous decision. Let's see how he does against Big Daddy. It doesn't take long for Bowe to enforce his will and control the action, a solid feat against the still formidable TNT Tucker. Tucker absorbs some noticeable punishment from the champion before it finally catches up to him. And Bowe scores a very impressive knockout over Tucker in the 5th round after controlling the action most of the way. It is the first time that Tucker is ever stopped and further inflates the reign of the undisputed champion. Even Iron Mike couldn't stop Tony Tucker. The new one for the ages has George Foreman's final push for the heavyweight title happening against Riddick Bowe. There had been hints of the two meetings since Bowe beat Holyfield in 1992. Bowe didn't hesitate to fight on the inside with Big George, and he was doing a great job. He was getting the better of their exchanges and tying up if he felt uncomfortable. Foreman was getting some good shots in too. Neither man was budging, but Foreman's age was clearly beginning to show as he wore down. The conclusion of round 4 saw Foreman with a badly cut left eye at the hands of Big Daddy Bowe. Red puffiness was forming around the eyes of Riddick as well. Bowe was covering up well as George was spending himself, and Bowe began to counter well from the outside from the 6th round on and was smothering George with good combinations. The rest of the fight saw Bowe heed the instruction of Eddie Futch, who knew now that his fighter was not going to knock out the old lion. Bowe stayed outside, sticking George, though in the 12th he came out looking for the knockout anyway, and he almost had it. In the end, Riddick Bowe scores a broad, unanimous decision win over Big George, but onlookers wonder how the bout may have gone if the two had fought if George were in his prime. And with that, Big Daddy Bowe closes the year out very strong as he bests another crop of solid competition while boasting 7 consecutive title defenses. 2 years the undisputed champion. Now fight fans wonder what would come of a match between Riddick Bowe and Mike Tyson. Bowe has beaten the best the division has to offer so far, and Iron Mike is rumored to return in the coming year. Will the Sons of Brownsville clash sooner rather than later? Will Tyson even recapture his old form? What about Lewis and Holyfield? I guess we'll see. Originally, Riddick Bowe had 3 bouts in 1995. The first against Herbie Hyde for the WBO title, and the latter bouts against Jorge Luis Gonzalez in the defense of the WBO title, and Evander Holyfield in a rubber match. In this timeline, undisputed world champion Riddick Bowe will fight 4 times. The chance of a lifetime for the beloved Frank Bruno as he looks to bring the undisputed title to England. The match starts off with the two men looking to establish the jab. Bowe gains the advantage immediately as he integrates his right hand in with the usual accuracy. Big bounce back Frank fights well until, as usual, he gets rocked and struggles to cover up. Bowe stops Bruno in the 8th to retain the undisputed championship for his now 8th title defense. Chatter echoes that Bowe should be looking to fight Lennox Lewis again, Britain's actual finest fighter, who has returned to form well since his shocking loss to Bowe in 1993. It's the right for the fight, as the winner of this fight will secure a matchup against Riddick Bowe later in the year. Tommy Morrison versus Razor Ruddock happens just as it did in the real 1995. Morrison clawed his way off the canvas to stop Riddick emphatically. And with this, the Duke secures his future, an opportunity to stamp his mark and salvage his career in full. The next matchup is against one of the best chins boxing has ever seen, Oliver McCall. McCall was never knocked out in his career, and the same remains here. There are some scares here and there for Bowe, as McCall's right hand catches him similar to how McCall caught Lennox Lewis in reality. Bowe's chin holds up, and he manages the unanimous decision. This defense has Bowe tied all-time in defenses for a heavyweight championship with Mike Tyson, Joe Frazier, and Muhammad Ali. Negotiations are held for a Bowe-Holmes super fight for all the belts to be held at the end of the year. They reach an agreement with the WBO imposed stipulation that Bowe can beat top contender Tommy Morrison for the right to the fight, with Bowe's titles also on the line. Morrison secured this opportunity back when he beat Razor Riddick. Of course, the WBC and WBA initially threatened to strip Bowe if he fights Holmes, but the prospect of missing out on this affair wins them over. That and the money from a Bowe-Morrison affair. Eddie Futch advises his fighter not to take this fight lightly as just another tune-up, game planning for Morrison in the event that this is another Ray Mercer case. Tommy shows up in the best shape of his career, similarly seeing this as a chance to revitalize his career. Bowe comes out strong against Tommy, pressuring the Duke. He catches the left hook from Morrison and is wobbled, but continues roughing the challenger up. Morrison, despite this, attempts to fight at a cautious distance as he did against George Foreman in reality. It doesn't work, and in a last-ditch effort to survive, he empties the tank trying to stop the champion. It's a gamble, one that defeats him, as Bowe is able to easily wash the gassed Morrison. Riddick scores the knockout win over Tommy, scoring his 10th consecutive undisputed title defense, and becoming the WBO's #1 contender, and ensuring the matchup with Larry Holmes. With this defense, Bowe joins Muhammad Ali for consecutive title defenses with 10. Larry Holmes has the pressure of a lifetime here. Can he turn back the clocks and regain the major titles? Can he actually become the oldest heavyweight champion ever? His career culminates tonight. All the backlash, all the hate, all the bitter sadness. Despite Larry's reputation, the story sells, and fans are split in their allegiance toward the favorite Bowe and the underdog Holmes. Now, Larry has a nice start, reminiscent of the prime Eastern assassin, where his jab controls as he dances. He runs out of steam, and Bowe lays on the pain. Amidst Bowe's pressure, Larry uses the ropes to sting the champion back, as he did against Ray Mercer and Evander Holyfield. In the long-awaited unification dream bout, Riddick Bowe scores the unanimous decision win over Larry Holmes, cementing himself further as undisputed champion and retaining his real-world conquest as being the first man to win all 4 sanctioning titles from the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO. The event catapults the WBO into relevance years before it did in reality, with Riddick Bowe's conquest being the standard. Larry Holmes, having accomplished all he set out to and proved he can still hang with the young lions, announces his retirement from the sport. With 11 title defenses under his belt against good competition, Riddick Bowe is riding high. Eddie Futch actually recommends that Bowe retire on top and head off into the sunset to enjoy his legacy. Riddick thinks otherwise and seeks to break the record of the man he just beat, Larry Holmes, in title defenses. Holmes had 20 defenses of the title over his reign, and there are whispers among fans that Bowe wouldn't have beaten a prime Larry Holmes. Also worth noting is that Riddick Bowe is now 43-0 as a pro. Will he catch up to and eclipse the timeless all-time heavyweight record of Rocky Marciano, the only heavyweight champ to retire undefeated? I guess we'll see. Meanwhile, Lennox Lewis had been on an undefeated tear of the division in his own right since his loss to Bowe. He's beaten Tommy Morrison, Razor Ruddock again, Michael Moorer, Tony Tucker, Oliver McCall, Ray Mercer, and seemingly retired both Evander Holyfield and George Foreman. On top of that, his wins have been arguably more impressive than those of Riddick Bowe over their similar conquests. Lennox Lewis looks to avenge the one loss of his professional career against the man he originally believed he had the mental edge over. The talks begin on Super Fight 2 between Bowe and Lewis. Also making the headlines on the year is the explosive return of Mike Tyson, who's drawing money like no tomorrow. He has garnered the attention of both Lewis and Bowe. There are still legions of loud fans who believe Tyson to be the true champion and clamor for Bowe to fight Iron Mike as soon as possible to see who the true champion is, despite the fact that Lennox Lewis should be up first. After all, Mike never got a rematch for the title after Buster Douglas flattened him. And what of Evander the Real Deal Holyfield? He was retired by Lennox Lewis in '94, though it was really heart problems that turned out to be a misdiagnosis. He returned in 1995 and also began building momentum. Where will he fit into the title scene? Originally, 1996 saw Bowe fight twice, both times against Andrew Golota. These fights finished and already shot Bowe and contributed big time to the state of his health today. In this timeline, Bowe will fight 3 times. Similar to reality, Bowe squares off against Andrew Golota and is shocked by the awkward style and ability of the Polish contender. However, this Bowe manages to make the necessary adjustments mid-fight and take control after being outboxed initially. Andrew responds in typical fashion by fouling and retaking the advantage at the cost of a couple of points, but securing a near knockdown by which Riddick is saved by the bell from it being counted. Bowe responds with a knockdown of his own in the next round, and Andrew answers the count. The final round sees the champion score another knockdown that Golota answers and then resorts to a headbutt of his own, which he uses to flatten Golota again, who is himself saved by the bell from the knockdown. Bowe manages the win via split decision, but many feel that Andrew had Riddick's number, only having just barely lost because of the points he lost to fouling. Bowe's utilization of similar dirty play doesn't help with how fans feel regarding this one. Fight fans yearn for a rematch, but will have to wait. Evander Holyfield returned in the previous year and beat out Ray Mercer for a shot against Riddick Bowe's undisputed title. He had a tune-up against Bobby Ches and looked as unimpressive as he did in reality. The bout between Bowe and Holyfield here plays out similarly to how it did in their real third bout, with both men tasting the canvas. It is the first time that Riddick leaves his feet in the pros. The difference is that Holyfield does not have hepatitis and stands up to drop Bowe again. Bowe answers and drops Evander again. From there, Bowe manages to outbox Evander as he did in 1992, but it's more narrow this time, as this is the same Holyfield who shocked Mike Tyson in reality. What a fight! The best of the trilogy by far, and that's saying something. This fight, as it did in reality, takes something out of both men they'd never get back. Eddie Futch advises the champion to take the rest of the year off, and he almost agrees until he remembers the hype of Mike Tyson. Bowe isn't concerned with Lennox Lewis because he already squared him away convincingly enough in his own mind. The WBC shafts Lennox Lewis in favor of Mike Tyson, as they did in reality, for a super fight with Riddick. The WBA, IBF, and WBO follow suit. Eddie Futch threatens to leave Bowe's camp if he doesn't wait out his next fight until Riddick convinces him to stay. In a weird twist from reality, this Riddick Bowe's dedication to the sport may be becoming a detriment, as he fights himself into the ground. The fight is signed as the year closer. A doubleheader at Madison Square Garden, fitting for the Sons of Brownsville. On the undercard of Bowe Tyson is Lewis Holyfield 2. Holyfield does better this time, but Lennox Lewis is still too much for the real deal and outboxes him similarly to how he did in reality. The difference being that Holyfield scores more counters this time and manages to nearly drop Lewis. Still not enough, and Lennox Lewis can no longer be ignored. He has to get a shot at Riddick Bowe soon. In his final fight of the year, Bowe finally squares off in another dream bout that pits him against fellow Brownsville native Iron Mike Tyson. Now, Tyson started off strong in his comeback until he ran into a rejuvenated, merciless Ray Mercer, who gave him all he could take in a bout Tyson edged out. Now, Mike is looking to ice his comeback by regaining the titles he initially unified back in the 80s. The fight sees the best version of Mike Tyson since his peak in the late 80s against Tony Tucker, Tyrell Biggs, and Michael Spinks. Tyson comes out confident and with head movement and explosive energy that takes everyone back to his undisputed reign. It takes the champion for a loop, and Tyson scores well when lunging in. It's when the two are on the inside that Bowe strikes back. The exchanges grow more gritty as the fight goes on, neither man backing down, and Tyson manages to drop Bowe mid-fight, and Eddie Futch nearly blows a gasket. Futch demands that Riddick start using his range against Tyson, a proven formula. He does just that and keeps Tyson at bay. Bowe prevails with a knockdown of his own before the fight goes to the cards. The fight is declared a draw, and fight fans yearn for a rematch. Bowe takes the most punishment he's ever taken in his career during this fight, in part due to his lack of rest between this and the Holyfield trilogy. He sounds noticeably slurred in the aftermath. Still, he leaves with his belts, and it's ruled another title defense. So 1996 shakes up Bowe's legacy a bit, as his defenses are widely disputed amongst fans, journalists, and his peers. The Golota and Tyson fights could have easily gone another way, and the Holyfield fight showed what a fine-tuned, determined boxer could do against Bowe. Despite his now admirable 14 title defenses, Bowe now has a shakier reputation amongst fans, especially those who believe he's avoiding Lennox Lewis. Lewis scored a dominant one-round knockout over Andrew Golota earlier in the year, sending a message to Bowe. Eddie Futch really begins drilling Riddick on staying in shape, maintaining the eye of the tiger, and preserving his health. Bowe takes heed. Riddick kicks his career into 11 to prepare for the bout against Lennox Lewis. Likewise, Lewis enters his arguable and absolute best going into 1997 for the bout against Big Daddy Bowe. Originally, 1997 saw Bowe join the Marine Corps and announce his retirement from boxing with an aim to return later in life after redefining his discipline. Bowe had noticeable slurred speech by this point as well. In this timeline, Bowe will fight 3 times. The rematch with Andrew Golota sees a stricter Bowe score a knockout win early on in the bout as he applies the pressure and gives Andrew no room to play dirty. For his 15th title defense, Bowe sets the narrative straight on Golota. Still, it wasn't as impressive a finish as Lennox Lewis had executed against Golota, given Bowe took 3 rounds as opposed to Lewis needing only 1. A good tune-up nonetheless, en route to the super fight. Mike Tyson finally faces off against Evander Holyfield, and he's beaten in the same manner he was in the real 1996. Nowhere near as motivated as he was against Riddick Bowe, and similarly having lost some years off his career from the war with Big Daddy. This win gets Evander back on track well and derails the rematch between Bowe and Tyson. Now, it is expected to go on sometime after Super Fight 2 between Bowe and Lewis. In his final defense before Super Fight 2, Bowe takes on rising prospect Shannon the Cannon Briggs in a surprising slugfest. The fight initially looked to match the Lewis-Briggs affair from reality's 1998, but devolved into a butcher's workshop with all the bloodshed. Bowe and Briggs proceeded to pummel one another, sending one another to the canvas on multiple occasions. Briggs shockingly overwhelmed Bowe in the second round, and the champ answered. In the next round, Bowe overwhelmed Briggs. Bowe seemed to have Briggs beaten in the fourth with the knockdown, but the Cannon showed heart we've never seen from him before and survived. The fifth round was a monster affair that saw Briggs once again show his heart by answering a knockdown and storm back to drop Bowe again. The champion answered and was dropped again at the bell and was thus saved. With Briggs ahead and the injuries piling up on both sides, Eddie Futch fired Big Daddy Bowe up and insisted he stop trading and enforce himself over the inexperienced challenger. That's just what he did too when he entered the round and dropped Briggs immediately. Shannon tried his damnedest to answer, but his body refused to obey and the referee waved him off. It was ultimately Bowe's chin and heart that prevailed. This heavyweight title bout goes down in the books as one of the best ever and is hailed as the greatest slugfest for the division since 1976's Foreman Lyle. A great defense for Bowe, but some fans claim he's losing his edge as he should have handled Briggs easily given the experience gap. Bowe is also noticeably banged up in the post-fight and his speech is slower and slurred. Pretty poor timing as his next defense would be a legacy sealer, putting him back on the mental mountaintop for boxing fans. Will he be ready? 16 title defenses strong, Bowe looks to secure the 17th against Lennox Lewis. Fight fans are also raving over how close Bowe is to breaking Larry Holmes' 20 title defense milestone. The build-up to the Bowe-Lewis rematch breaks the market as it shapes up to be the most anticipated fight since Ali Frazier. The build-up again sees Bowe doing his best impression of Muhammad Ali to sell the fight, but Lewis isn't joking around. Not too many words and not a single smile on the path to the fight for Lennox. The only thing Lennox emphasizes is that he is going to knock Bowe out like he did almost a decade earlier in the Olympics and like he should have 4 years earlier in their first fight. The fight sees both men at their absolute best, fighting a dead even fight up until the end. In the final round, Lennox Lewis drops Riddick Bowe in a flash to open the round, and the champ rises, flustered. Bowe fights back well, but Lewis ever subtly overwhelms him and drops him again in the closing seconds. To much controversy, the referee waves Bowe off before he can even attempt to rise, which also happens to be just before the final bell sounds, and it's all over. Lennox Lewis is the new undisputed heavyweight champion of the world by way of knockout over the decade's super champion Riddick Big Daddy Bowe, and fulfilled his promise of revenge. The bad blood continues between the two as a fight breaks out started by Bowe's camp, who are outraged by the referee's choice to call the fight a split second before the bell instead of allowing Bowe the chance to rise and go to the cards. The brawl leads to Bowe's deranking and indefinite suspension. Lennox Lewis is finally the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world and has avenged his lone loss while also spoiling Bowe's chase for Larry Holmes' record. Lewis has also taken Bowe's O, ending any chance of Riddick catching Rocky Marciano. It's also a sting that he's one off from Holmes' 48-0. 47-1-1 still ain't bad, but the loss and aftermath really shake up the former champion. Both Riddick and Lennox, amidst the chaos, appear to be worse off than they've ever been after any fight. Health concerns may be on the rise for the two best heavyweights in the world as they've served to deteriorate one another. Their rivalry is shaping up to be the best since Ali and Frazier in the minds of some fans. Some still believe Bowe and Holyfield's trilogy to be the best of the era, however. Bowe descends into a downward spiral that forces him to contemplate retiring. Eddie Futch whips Bowe back into shape Rocky III style and even brings in Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, and Larry Holmes to get Riddick back on track. Holmes joins Riddick's training team full-time, looking to sharpen Riddick's jab further to go along with his devastating overhand right, and most importantly, match the effectiveness of Lennox Lewis's hybrid jab. Originally in 1998, Bowe made a horrible life move when he kidnapped his wife and children, and this would create lasting repercussions that would extend to 2001 and beyond. Fortunately, this is wiped from existence in our What If. After losing to the man he seemingly sealed his legacy against back in 1993, Bowe is forced to serve his suspension and sits out 1998. It's a blessing in disguise that finally forces him to rest and heal up. The time is also used to rebuild Bowe's psyche as he balances his time between family and staying in shape with his team. Lewis and Holyfield engage in a trilogy bout for the undisputed title. The bout is ruled a draw, though many believe Holyfield won the fight, opposite to how things played out in reality. The Bowe fight seems to have taken a lot out of the Lion, evident in his lacking performance against a man he's already beaten twice. Holyfield is denied a rematch by the sanctioning bodies, them instead preferring a contender matchup between he and Mike Tyson. With this result, Evander Holyfield has now not beaten either Bowe or Lewis in their trilogies. And Lewis is noticeably exhausted and drained after the fight, barely able to hold his interview. Is his health becoming a serious issue? Tyson and Holyfield engage in a rematch that unfolds as their 1997 bite fight did, but this time, the fight is not stopped and continues after the second bite. As they continue to fight, Tyson targets Holyfield's ears and mixes in some headbutts of his own to further frustrate and wear down the real deal. It doesn't work, and Holyfield continues willing his way over Iron Mike. Unfortunately for Evander, referee Mills Lane eventually stops the fight due to the damage Evander has taken. His ears are bleeding badly and seriously deformed from the punches after the bite. Mike Tyson has secured his chance to regain his undisputed title against Lennox Lewis in the dirtiest and most suspicious heavyweight affair maybe ever. Fans and experts wonder what sort of funny business was on that didn't see Tyson disqualified for biting Evander Holyfield not once but twice. Was it corruption? Who knows? This concludes 1998. The return of Big Daddy Bowe sees him fight 4 times in effort to regain his status and ranking. Riddick starts strong in his return by breaking the comeback momentum of David Tua via unanimous decision. Tua had lost to Ike Ibeabuchi back in 1997 and was looking good on his road back. The fight sees a new Riddick Bowe that utilizes a pressure-based inside style, a stinging outside fighting style, and an awkward style that disrupts the rhythm of his opponents. Clearly, he has learned much from Frazier, Norton, and Holmes. It's also worth noting, however, that Tua really rocked Bowe during the fight on a few occasions, to the shock of fight fans. Has Bowe lost his chin? Others, however, note that Bowe seemed to already be more susceptible to punishment before his suspension. Next up for Riddick is undefeated prospect, the President, Ike Ibeabuchi. Ibeabuchi's chin and skill initially phased Bowe, but Riddick makes the necessary adjustments to begin outboxing Ike from the outside with his superior size. Near the end, the fight turns to a brawl that sees Bowe outwar Ibeabuchi on the inside. In the end, Riddick Bowe secures a unanimous decision win over Ike, a win that generates further buzz for his name as he ascends the rankings. Unfortunately for Ibeabuchi, the loss sends him into the spiral he had in reality, and this is the last we ever see of him in the pros. Mike Tyson's last chance to regain the undisputed title he lost to Buster Douglas 9 years earlier, as he openly claims it to be. Despite his means of attaining said chance, Tyson's fans storm out to back him against the Brit. Likewise, the UK champions their champ, and it plays out precisely as it did in their 2002 matchup, with Lennox still having enough in the tank to dominate the fading Iron Mike. Of course, Lewis is said not to have beaten the real Mike, and that if he fought even the Mike that fought to a draw with Riddick Bowe years earlier, he'd have lost. Tyson fades out from here, his drive and love for the sport completely drained and shot. It is Lewis's only fight in 1999, a particular choice enforced by Emanuel Stewart, who has noticed Lewis's health declining. Next up for Bowe is another contender on the comeback trail, Hasim Rahman. The fight sees Rahman catch Bowe with a solid right hand that drops him right as Riddick seemed to have Rahman stunned and ready to go. Bowe answers the count, but remains on uneasy legs as he wills his way to surviving the round. Bowe recuperates on the steel and returns to stagger Rahman with a punch thrown after the bell. Rahman never recovers from this blow and is knocked out by Bowe in the next round. A result similar to how David Tua beat Rahman in 1998. Riddick Bowe declares that he will regain the undisputed title soon and that he will beat Lennox Lewis like he did in 1993. It's personal for Bowe and he wears it on his sleeves. Rahman claims that he was robbed, but no one seems to care either way. Bowe's final fight of 1999 sees him face another undefeated rising contender in Michael Grant. Grant poses a new challenge for Bowe in that he has the size advantage all around. Bowe goes into the fight with the goal of applying constant pressure on his bigger opponent. The strategy works wonders as Bowe knocks out Grant in the opening round after 2 knockdowns. It's rather shocking and, in hindsight, more impressive than how Lennox Lewis beat Grant in reality. That's another undefeated streak Bowe has ended, and he prepares to enter 2000 as the #1 challenger in the world for Lennox Lewis's undisputed title. An overview of the year shows that while Bowe has clearly become more well-rounded and refined, he has lost the granite chin he once had. He has also slowed down in all areas, but not enough to warrant worry. Meanwhile, Lennox Lewis has also slowed down, but he's still considered the best heavyweight in the world, and Emanuel Stewart has kept him well-oiled. What both men lack physically, they make up for mentally. Their second fight in 1997 really changed both men, for better or for worse. Lennox Lewis handpicks Riddick as his next opponent to open the new millennium. Emanuel Stewart advises against this, preferring to further scope out the new Riddick Bowe, but Lennox stands firm in his decision. Both men need the rubber match under their belts. The opening year of the decade, the century, and the millennium sees both Lewis and Bowe fight once, and that's against one another. Many celebrities, public figures, and athletes across the sporting world attend Super Fight 3. Eddie Futch informs Riddick that this will be his last fight in his corner as he is retiring. The pre-fight build surpasses that of their previous bouts. The press conferences are volatile. The weigh-in was a measuring stick contest. Both Lennox and Riddick entered the fight in the best shape of their careers up to this point. Unlike the previous bouts, Riddick no longer plays the part of a fool and is stone-faced serious. Lewis is his usual calm, cool, and collected self. An assassin ready to do the job. The stare down in the middle of the ring before the fight is on the same level as the stare down between Tommy Hearns and Wilfred Benitez. At the bell, the two come out very aggressive in a bid to blast the other man out of there. They tag one another with some deadly shots, and the fight devolves into a barrage of wild shots that leave both men visibly scarred. Both Lewis and Bowe kiss the canvas during this exchange, and both answer the bell as well. The fight turns more tactical as it goes on, with both men now attempting to outbox one another. Lennox utilizes his reach advantage, and Bowe decides to apply constant pressure a la Joe Frazier against Muhammad Ali. Lennox manages to keep up with Bowe's unconventional rhythm, continuously adapting. Both men drop one another again during this chess match of sorts, again leaving the fight dead even. The championship rounds see the two deadlocked in a battle of the wills that sees no clear winner, as the fight ends with the two holding one another up in the middle of the ring. It's the worst beating in boxing since the Thriller in Manila, and both men will certainly never be the same. Finally, the two embrace one another as equals and friends before even hearing the decision. The fight is declared a draw, and Lennox announces that he'll be taking a hiatus from boxing to focus on his life outside of the sport. Riddick announces a hiatus as well to focus on his family and Eddie Futch in his twilight years. The titles are vacated and spread throughout the division as a tournament is devised to crown new champions before there is once again an undisputed champion. The years 2000, 2001, and 2002 see these tournaments. In 2002, Lewis and Bowe announced their returns to boxing and entered the tournament after fighting tune-up bouts. The Klitsch Bros seek to hold all of the titles between themselves, and the tournaments for unification come down to Lennox Lewis versus Vitaly Klitschko and Riddick Bowe versus Vladimir Klitschko. Riddick Bowe's head trainer is now the Easton assassin, Larry Holmes. Lewis beats Vitaly the same way he did in real life, via a stoppage by cuts after being outboxed initially. Riddick manages to rope a dope Vladimir and knocks him out late in the fight, akin to what Ross Purity accomplished against Dr. Steelhammer. There is obvious controversy and requests for a rematch around Lewis Vitaly. There is similar controversy over Bowe following through with his elbow in knocking out Vlad in his comeback win. The two fights are classic tales of experience outshining all else, and there are no rematches. Bowe versus Lewis 4 is set for heavyweight unification, a decade since their first bout. Now friends, the build-up is similar to that of Bowe Holyfield 3 in our reality. Still, Riddick voices something. They aren't truly even. Technically, Lennox has beaten him twice while he's only beaten Lennox once and fought to a draw with him. Riddick promises Lennox that he'll even the score come their fight, and that if he doesn't, he owes him one. And Lennox responds with, "Bring it on, man." The moment echoes their verbal fight from 1992, but this time it's one of respect and honor between two great warriors. The fight is a chess match all the way through, up until Riddick catches Lennox with a sharp right hand that staggers him. Riddick begins pummeling Lewis on the ropes until the fight is stopped by the referee, shades of their Olympic battle back in 1988, but now in favor of Bowe. It turns out Big Daddy had just a little bit more in the tank. The fight fans are also proven to be right in the speculation that Lewis was fortunate to win TKO 6 over Vitaly. Riddick Bowe is once again, and finally, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Immediately, he announces to the crowd his retirement from boxing and praises Lennox Lewis as his greatest rival and one of his best friends. Vlad and Vitaly are offered an immediate unification bout to crown a heavyweight champion, but deny, as they agreed to never fight one another. Therefore, the titles are again vacated and spread throughout the division, creating another roller coaster of heavyweight madness to come that ultimately sees the Klitsch Bros achieve the same as they did in reality: hold all of the major titles between themselves until the emergence of Tyson Fury. Bowe and Lewis ride off into the sunset. Holyfield and Bowe remain close friends. Tyson and Holyfield make up as they did in reality. The four warriors often meet up and are seen as the modern Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton, and Holmes. And they even make a Champions Forever sequel dedicated to them, covering their four-way rivalry, which made the 90s the arguable best time to be a boxing fan. In fact, the 90s heavyweight division is widely recognized as being the best era, held in higher regard than even the 1970s heavyweight division, though debate still persists. And that's one way I could see it going down. Evander Holyfield's legacy took a big hit with him not beating Bowe once, never beating Lewis, and even losing in controversy to Mike Tyson. I'd say he's the biggest casualty of this all, especially considering he may have been robbed against both Lewis and Bowe. And many men like Michael Moorer, Bruce Seldon, Herbie Hyde, Francois Botha, and Tommy Morrison did not become champion due to the unification of the division under its Iron Man in the new Riddick Big Daddy Bowe. There's also an assortment of fighters who don't become multi-time champions. Riddick Bowe's fantasy counterpart here may be considered the greatest heavyweight ever. Now, how would you have rebooked Riddick Bowe's career? As always, I'm lurking in the comments. This is the Charles Jackson, author of the Boxing Encyclopedia, and I'll see you next time. This What If is also dedicated to Mr. Spread Eagle, who is a huge Riddick Bowe fan as I am, and always wonders just what would have come from Riddick Bowe if he were disciplined. I hope this satisfies you, sir. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.